Hey everybody, and welcome back to Pro AV Today. We are in studio today, and I've got my next guest here with me as well, which is a rarity these days. Most of the interviews are recorded, but I have a story that I wanted to tell really quickly. I was out with my wife celebrating the 4th of July last year near our hometown, a couple cities away, and had the opportunity to see a drone show in person for the first time. And as somebody in the AV and technology community, I didn't know what to expect, right? There's a lot of gimmicks out there. There's a lot of things that are very novel and cool that you see once and you feel like you've seen it, plenty of times. And I was pleasantly surprised that at the time I saw the largest drone show in the world, and I was blown away. So I said, look, I've got to figure out who these people are, who's doing it, how are they doing it, and then realized, ironically enough, that these folks literally are in our backyard, especially where I'm from here in Texas. So I said, look, we got to chat with these guys because we have so many different questions about the world of drone technology, the world of integrated technology with drones, and then you can talk about things like branding, events, and things like that. So without further ado, I want to introduce my next guest for the show today. That's Rick Boss, the president of Sky Elements Drones, the company who you may or may not know is responsible for about, 50% of the drone shows in North America?
Yeah, thanks, Ben. Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it. Yeah, we're flying about 50% of the shows in the U.S. We've got somebody else that tracks us, so we're closer to 60%, but I like to say about half the shows in the U.S. right now.
Well, Rick, I got to ask, I hinted at it a second ago, and a lot of viewers that are listening to this, we're working with some of the best technology in the world, whether it's, automation, LED wall, digital signage, all sorts of different lighting technologies. But I was really struck by how impactful the drone show was, because a lot of the traditional things that you run up into with an installation or a touring show is that, there's a level of fixedness to it, I guess, right? It is largely going to be what it's going to be. But the drone show was so malleable and there was so much flexibility, and this show specifically was integrated with a fireworks show. But, I want to ask, really before we dig in deep, this world is evolving, it feels like pretty dramatically, even month over month at this point. Where in the world are we in the life cycle of drone shows?
Yeah, it's a great question. We're at the very beginning. I tell folks this is such an immature market. The drones are still new. The technology is still novel. So literally the sky's the limit. We're going to see so many changes.
Oh, that's got to be your
drones.
Motto. That's got to be your new motto.
It is. Yeah, it's right at the beginning. We're super excited about what's going to be happening next. I mean, we've got in the lab the next generation, the generation after that, and the generation after that. So we're going to see a lot of changes in this space for sure.
Well, what's cool, I mentioned that I saw it kind of in coordination with the fireworks show, right? And there's a lot of familiarity. You look at the 4th of July shows, things like that. But I was really impressed by, especially after talking with you, the applications beyond even necessarily, the 4th of July, New Year's type shows. We're seeing corporations, theme parks, trade shows, all sorts of different folks fly a lot of these shows. How is the market spreading and continuing to evolve?
Yeah, it's very interesting. It's new to us. We come from a pyrotechnic background, and our customers were pretty set, and we're relatively local here in Texas, and the drone show space really opened up all types of events. And so we've been really surprised by how many different events happen around the country, from anniversaries of companies to community events, having that wow moment in a particular event, also bringing, some butts into the seats for Major League Baseball, things of that nature. So the use case is very diverse and creates a lot of fun opportunities to just do something different.
One of the things that really stuck out to me about the show, and one of the largest initiatives really in the technology industry right now is really the idea of accessibility, of sustainability, environmental friendliness, and that really is one of the primary benefits of drone technology. Because look, as cool as it is to see the fireworks go bang thing, and then look, I love a great fireworks show.
So do we. We love fireworks too.
But there's you talk about people with sensitivities to loud noises and dogs and PTSD survivors and things like that. Even that plus the idea that look, you're not really putting pollutants out into the air too. There's another layer to the drone technology, that goes beyond just the show side of things. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of the things that we didn't fully appreciate when we got into the space. We really got into it because it looked amazing. It looked cool. It was super fun. We're still having a ton of fun. And as we started moving through it, we really noticed the big push that was happening around what can we do to make less of an impact on the community yet still have an amazing celebration. And so the drones, very much fit that application well. We go in and we leave nothing behind. There's no debris, there's no smoke, there's no particulates. None of that is happening with a drone show. So not only can we bring in a new, different wow moment, but something that's far more sustainable, way less impact for the community in any situation you might have going on there. So we see a lot of communities where they have fire danger maybe going on, and the drone show is a great way to celebrate and avoid that. We also have communities, as development continues, that noise impact is huge in a lot of communities, and so a drone show could come in and not impact the rest of the neighbors that don't want to be a part of the celebration.
We talk about noise ordinances and things like that. Obviously, at this point, we're flying drones mostly at night, which is when a lot of those ordinances hit. But you know, even here in Dallas, you run into a lot of challenges even beyond that, right? We've got 2 major airports here within 10 miles of each other.
Yeah.
What are some of those restrictions typically that come into place? Is it you can't fly X number of miles within an airport, or what are some of those common challenges that folks may not expect from a lot of these shows?
Yeah, a lot of challenges come in. I'll hit the noise one first, is that we're silent. In fact, we have a lot of events where they have to announce the drone show or else folks don't see it happening. So we help with noise ordinance, no problem at all. In fact, there's a particular resort that we're working with that's one of the issues, that they have a big community around there and they had to stop doing fireworks because of the noise, and now we're flying 10, 15 drone shows a year for that particular resort and making zero impact for the neighbors. But then in general, for flying drone shows, we're working with the FAA for flying drone shows. And a lot of folks might think the FAA is there to shut us down or over-regulate, and they're really not. They're our partners, and they want to have a safe airspace. So yeah, whenever we're working in an environment like here in Dallas, multiple airports, we're just coordinating with the FAA to make sure it's a safe environment and that other aircraft know when we're flying. So as we get closer to airports, there's more coordination with the FAA. When we're flying further away from airports, it's a simple notification that we're flying. So there is a lot of regulation that comes into play, but it's relatively straightforward, I would say. It's complex, but once you get into it, it's relatively straightforward to make things happen.
Well, is there a lot of, are there a lot of established regulations that you're already working with, right? Or is it one of those things where you're having to make them up as you go, right? I remember very dramatically, or very specifically, when we started flying drones in the air, even before you had to be certified as a pilot to capture content, the FAA was just playing catch up.
Yeah.
Are there a lot of established regulations for this, or is it something you're almost having to play it by ear?
Yeah, maybe I put it in the context. We call it drone years. So we've been doing this for almost 4 years, and so for us, that's about 21 years. So it feels like they're actually well in place, but they're not. At the very beginning, my business partner, Preston Ward, he's also a practicing attorney, and we were working with the FAA just to help build the rules around these drone shows and what it means to fly a swarm of drones. It's a novel application. We were the 3rd or 4th company that actually applied for it, was flying shows. We're the highest volume drone company, so we work a lot with the FAA. So we're constantly working with them, talking with regulations. I don't think there's a week that goes by that Preston's not engaged with the FAA, identifying things that haven't been built yet. We're just dealing with one in California this week where there's things that have been in place for 20 years that no longer make sense in 2024. And the FAA is not quite sure how to do it. So Preston's actually helping them craft the language to make it work for drone shows and drones in general. So I guess I'd round that to say that it is new. There are things coming into place, and we're helping develop some of the language for drone shows in particular.
Well, look, you brought up California, which is kind of its own subset of regulations.
Sure.
A lot of times. But, it's hard to think California and not think, the Dodgers, the Angels, Disneyland.
Yeah.
And when you and I had the chance to meet back at IAPA for the first time, that's immediately where my mind went, right? Is, a lot of folks will think municipalities, and absolutely there's a market for that in shows. But there's a lot of opportunity in the world of sports and theme parks. And one of the questions that comes up that we have to deal with all the time in our community is intellectual property.
Yeah.
It's probably not a conversation that a lot of people know that they have to have, right? Because even if you're working with, let's say, the Dodgers in this case, there has to be some level of licensing, right? You can't, in the same way I couldn't just project an image of the Dallas Cowboys, or else I feel like Jerry Jones would send a sniper at me. I can't just put that up on a building down here in Dallas. What are some of those things like intellectual property rights that people probably haven't necessarily thought about even before they come to you guys?
Yeah, since like we're talking about, it's a brand new space in the drone show space, and that is a hot topic right now is how do we treat IPs? We've worked with so many brands and gone through so many processes with MLB teams and bringing brands to life that we've become very familiar and sensitive to it, but it's still the Wild West in drone shows, and so there's other companies that maybe are just flying things that they shouldn't be, but we have customers that certainly come to us and say, hey, we want to do this or that, and we're like, well, we don't have the rights to those things. They have to acquire them. We just had an interesting one, somebody's having a wedding and they're like, well, we live in Hollywood and we want to fly the Hollywood sign as in part of a drone show. Well, a lot of people don't know that the IP rights around the Hollywood sign are well established, and it's very expensive to get the IP rights to fly the Hollywood sign if it appears anywhere. So yeah, there's a regular ongoing conversation to make sure anything that we're flying that somebody's intellectual property is covered, and figuring out how to work around it. And what's fun though is working with a lot of the brands to understand how they want to protect their IP. You know, we've worked with Marvel, with Disney, with Nickelodeon, and all of them have a little bit different flavor on exactly how their IP is to be represented, and we work hard to make sure it's done right.
Well, look, I can already hear the gears turning into a lot of marketers' minds right now saying, okay, this is really interesting. I hadn't thought about this as a public activation tool or an experiential form of entertainment.
Yeah.
You know, a lot of times when marketers or event planners or whoever come to you for the first time, what are some of the things that they're surprised by? Because it's easy to say, I mean, intellectual property may be one of those things, but you know, they will say, hey, I want to do a drone show and I want to do it, you know, XYZ date. Figure it out. What are some of the things that they may not even consider ahead of time?
Yeah, one of the biggest things that we run into with drone shows that folks aren't thinking about is where we can fly a drone show as far as space. A lot of times you're looking on your small screen that's 6 inches across, and the drone show doesn't look very big on your phone, but in real life, as you've experienced, drone shows are massive and they take up a ton of space. It's very common for our drone shows to be 400, 450 feet across, 400 feet tall, which is phenomenal for marketers. It makes a huge impact, visibility for significant distances, but I also need a space that I can fly that from. You know, when they say, hey, I would love to do this from downtown, wherever that might be, that's typically really hard to do because we can't have anybody underneath of the drones for safety. So we need a relatively large space where we can protect the folks that are underneath the drones. That's probably one of the biggest things that we run into as a marketer is like, I really want to target this space. I want it to read to this space, and finding somewhere that we have the right amount of space to fly it for is one of the biggest challenges or one of the biggest misconceptions. They feel like it's a drone show, we can just fly it. I'd say the second one too would be that they feel like it can transverse. So most of our drone shows fly directly above where the drones are on the ground. We can move it around up to about 1,000 feet, but sometimes we get folks like, hey, can you take off from here and then fly a mile over that way, perform the show, and then fly back? Unfortunately, we don't have magic batteries yet, so we can't do that.
You know, I want to talk about safety. You brought it up as that first point there, and I think, you know, even going back to the fireworks side of things, that for a lot of folks is the number one concern. For just about every pyro is the number one concern, right?
Mm-hmm. For sure.
You know, there is an element of, I don't think risk is the right word, but awareness that you guys bring into the world of drones, right? What are some of those common challenges? Is it, you know, you mentioned not being able to have people fly underneath, but, you know, are weather patterns a threat? What are some of those common threats and really ways that you guys are able to proactively be safe?
Yeah, definitely safety is the number one concern, and coming from a pyrotechnic background, that is our top concern. We want everybody to enjoy things safely, and drone shows are the same way. And the number one is just making sure that we have a space where there's nobody underneath of the drone should something happen. We say these things are tiny robots, and occasionally they decide they want to land now and not at the end of the show, and sometimes they land in a spot that they weren't designed to land in. And so we make sure we have that safety margin and not have anybody underneath of there. And then we do have weather constraints. The biggest one is about visibility. So sometimes we get fogged in. I don't know, probably a handful of times, maybe it's not been quite that many in like San Francisco, we've been fogged out. Niagara Falls, we flew an amazing show for Disney. First one was great, 1 hour later, fog bank, can't see anything. And so we can't fly in those because other aircraft have to be able to see our aircraft, and we have to be able to see other aircraft just in case there's an issue. So those are our two number one visibility, our two biggest safety things are making sure nobody's underneath of it and make sure we have good visibility. We can't fly in high winds, but we fly pretty high winds. Our particular drones are very robust. We fly in 25 to 30 mile an hour winds without much problem.
You know, we talk about security and safety, and naturally in the world that we live in right now, the post-digital transformation world, if you will, naturally folks are going to ask about cybersecurity and things like that. I don't even know that really we've fully formed what the world of cybersecurity and drones and closed networks fully even looks like. But what are some of the conversations that you're having right now about cybersecurity specifically in that world?
Sure. Yeah, we definitely have conversations around that because a swarm network, a swarm of drones is controlled by a network and has vulnerabilities to it around security. So it's a constant evolving thing to make sure we've got the most robust security for the drones, the most robust drone platform so that even if we do have a security breach, it doesn't cause any type of safety issues. But right now, it is the top of the line security that you can see out there as far as the encryption that happens on our channels and the detection methodology that we have both on the drone and on the ground if there's any type of safety concern. And so far to date, even around the world, there's been a few instances of it. And the nice thing is in this industry is that folks share it, add it to the algorithm of what an attack might look like. But knock on wood, not too many folks have tried to attack these swarm drones. It's entertainment. The drones have no real payload other than a light bulb. So at the end of the day, it's a pretty low target for anybody to want to go after, and we certainly have no data on it that is worth anything at all. So we've had very little folks going after it, but we make sure that it is because you just never want anything to happen.
Agreed. And you know, one thing that I think naturally kind of jumps out to me is not even just in the world of drone shows, but in the world of, I guess, UAVs in general, is that you see drones and a lot of these technologies being adapted into different places. Right here, even in Texas, we have Walmart does some drone deliveries, and we've got
a lot.
Uber at one point was trying to build an unmanned heliport here, and so many of these things are constantly evolving. And there's really, I guess you kind of touched on it earlier, but there's a nonstop evolution of just the world of UAVs in general. How do drone shows specifically? I guess even we'll just say drones specifically, how does that fit into the larger conversation, and what are some of the ways that you're continuing to see these applications evolve, right? Because there might be a day where we're talking about massive 4 or 5 ton drone shows where you've got, sky taxis and, they're carrying stuff. I mean, there's just so many opportunities. How are you guys contributing to that conversation at large?
Yeah, it's ongoing conversation around what's happening with traffic. So that's one of the just regular conversation we have with the FAA is what's happening with traffic as far as deliveries, right? And eventually, there's going to be Uber helicopter taxis flying around. So doing that and working through that process I think it'd be pretty straightforward. The technology is pretty advanced right now as we start to get into remote ID, we start to get into ways that all the traffic can identify each other and work around it. What it makes me think of when you mention it, just think about what's happening in that space altogether. And drone shows are actually benefiting more from that space than ever, right, with battery technology. So Uber wants to fly you in a helicopter from, your office to the airport. In order for them to do that, they need amazing batteries. And so there are billions of dollars from Tesla to Uber helicopters to make batteries better. And that makes our drone shows better. We can fly them longer and longer every day. They go longer and longer. Like we've done test shows here where we've been able to fly on one battery 30-minute drone shows. So you can do some amazing things with it. And the other one is the GPS accuracy that we get. And for those that know, it's GNSS, but we like to say everybody uses GPS, but that has become so sophisticated because those delivery drones need to know exactly where they are. That autonomous car needs to know exactly where it is when it's driving you. Because one day Uber wants autonomous car to come pick you up. And the only way it can do it safely is it knows where it is within a centimeter. So all of that technology feeds into what's happening in our drone light show space, making shows that much better and that much safer. So it's a nice byproduct of what they're doing.
I'm glad you have to deal with it and not the event planners, because imagine somebody who has already a million things on their plate trying to coordinate with the FAA and GPS coordinates and all that. And speaking of kind of the marketer and the event planner side, folks might be watching this saying, how do I get started in this? Do I send an email? How do I even consider getting something like a quote, or where do I start? How typically do you see people start when they really want to have these conversations?
Yeah, our conversations typically start with that, with a phone call and an email to our Sky Elements webpage, and we'll give them a call back and start coordinating with them. And what our goal and what we're able to do is we're very turnkey. So we could come out to an event, we're self-contained. I don't need power requirements. I don't need much other than just the space to fly, and let me know when you want it to fly and how to coordinate the music. And then we do the heavy lift around design. We've got the largest design team in the US. I think I just hired another person that makes me the largest in the world now, so I need to check with the other guy that's in Europe. He's got a big team. I might be bigger than he is right now. And so we do all the heavy lifting around design, logistics. Our team will help them from ideation on what's the concept, what's the wow moment they're looking for their event, all the way to getting set up, approved by the FAA, taking care of any local permits, and just making a cool wow moment for them.
Man, that I'm gonna go just get a drone show for,
Let's go.
For fun.
When's your birthday?
I don't know. Well,
Let's go.
It's in April.
It's in April. Well, there we go.
I don't know. My wife might yell at me if we've got drones flying around in the backyard. So we'll see. Last question here, and I like to always end with this. If you had a crystal ball and you said, look, in the next 5, 10 years, or whatever it is, 45 to 70 drone years, where is the technology going next? Is it scale? Is it larger shows? Is it longer shows? Is it tighter knit pixel type shows? What's the future for a lot of these?
Ben, you're hitting right on them. I mean, you're nailing it. You're like prognosticating exactly where I think it's going to go. We'll be able to see, right now we've got distances between the, if we call it pixel pitch, right? We've got a pretty big pitch right now. You're going to see that tighten up. We've already tightened it up over the past 3 years, from 3 meters down to we're 1.8 meter on a lot of the shows, and I think you'll see that get even closer, so you have higher resolution. Definitely higher drone counts. I mean, our very first Major League Baseball show that we flew was 200 drones, and it was amazing. I loved it. I still remember to this day. It was a great moment. The crowd was going bananas. And this year for the Dodgers, we're flying 10 drone shows for the Dodgers, and they'll have 4 1,000 drone shows as a part of that mix, and then 6 500 drone shows. So definitely larger, definitely high resolution that we'll see in the drone shows. Definitely longer shows. I think we're going to see for some marketers and advertisers when we can fly shows continuously. Last year we did our first hour-long show, proving out that we could do something and have a nice something in the sky for a long period of time, advertising, doing some kind of wow moment for folks, and that's going to be happening more. And then different payloads. Right now, we're flying a light bulb with colors, but in the future, you're going to see different payloads, different ways to wow the audience. So, looking forward to some of those things. And the other thing I would say too is that I don't even know in 5 years. I can tell you 3 years all that's going to happen. In 5 years, I just can't wait to see what we're going to be doing in the drone space. It's going to be super cool.
And well, look, we got to start flying LED walls. And if you're an LED manufacturer, call Rick tomorrow, because this is. It's a really interesting concept, right? Because you're right. You talk a lot about pixel pitch and actually using the drone as the display, but you talk about payloads, and you have the opportunity to have a lot of different physical elements.
Absolutely.
One thing that even jumps out is, look, imagine being able to fly the Earth or a sphere or something like that and have drones circle around it, right? There's a lot of physicality that can be incorporated as that payload goes up as well. So
I'd say the other piece is, you just mentioned that you think about what's happening with drone shows is you're going to see more integration, right? So you were there with a fireworks show and the drones, the two mediums coming together to make a really cool moment. For those folks that are in the Dallas area, what we do with FC Dallas, the folks out there are phenomenal and have put together a great multimedia presentation where we've got drones, we've got Like Star Wars is the best example, right? And for the FC Dallas, we've got Darth Vader out on the field doing a lightsaber battle with Luke, and he's got video boards going. People have got LED bracelets that are lighting up to the same colors as the drones, and fireworks going off. And so bringing all of those elements together, including drones, as part of the multimedia, we're going to see more and more of that integration too, just to make that much cooler of a wow moment for folks.
Well, look, I'm going to put the call in too. The next Taylor Swift tour is going to have drones in it, and I'm sure it's going to be you guys. So
there we go.
That'll be, hey, you get the Swiftie market. You'll start doing whatever you want, whenever you want.
Absolutely.
But, I'll tell you what, Rick, we've got to have you on regularly because this is such an interesting space because it really is, ironically enough, how our industry is continuing to evolving, right, or continue to evolve. We're having conversations about things like pixel pitch and payload and power consumption, and those are all conversations that, as an AV industry, we're having nonstop, right? Next one is you're going to have to figure out how to start integrating IT into all these because that is, I don't know. Well, that's a topic for another day. But Rick, thank you so much for coming on today. We appreciate you coming in studio.
Yeah, thanks for having me here, Ben. Appreciate it. Look forward to the next one.
Well, thank you for tuning in as well. Be sure to like and subscribe. Check us out next time on the next episode of Pro AV Today.